Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. 2024 is over, or at least it will be by the time this podcast comes out. And as is our custom, it is time for us to name the best anime of the past year. And, you know, since we are the best anime podcast, then this is obviously the definitive list.
Therefore, our word is law.
Yeah, the best anime. But yeah, kind of a weird coincidence. I swear this must have happened at some point before because we've been doing this for so long, but we're actually going to be putting this episode out the same time as our written top 10 posts, because our normally scheduled podcast day is falling on January 1st. So, hey, if you're listening, follow along. You can go to theglorioblog.com. The post will be up there.
Start the year as you mean to go on.
Yeah, but yeah, before we get into actually talking about the anime, let's introduce everybody. I'm Jel. I'm joined by Iro.
I'm still here. I'm not dead yet.
Still alive, going into 2025. We're joined by G.
Where were you on the day Trigger saved Christmas?
I remember it like it was a few days ago.
Look, I'm just saying that Panty and Stocking 2 trailer, pretty fun. And hey, they confirmed Teddy Lloyd's coming back. So really,
that's really the most important.
It's like it never left.
I heard Teddy Lloyd, and I saw Scanty and knee socks. That's all I needed for Panty and Stocking season 2. But yes, amazing that show is happening.
I mean, in some ways, like I heard some talks that was like, does an irreverent, gross out comedy even play in 2025 anymore? And I counter by going, you're missing the forest for the trees. This is an anime about girl failures and evil women. It's better suited than anything to come back in 2025.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah, I
think it's one of the few shows that can leap into... We're not talking about new anime right now. It's one of the few shows that can leap into season 2 like with no problems whatsoever, I think.
I feel like,
as I said, go ahead, Jill.
I feel like there has been maybe it's my circles I'm in or whatever, a slight resurgence in popularity with Panty and Stocking over the past year or two or something. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but yeah, it's happening. Were you going to say something, G?
Oh, I was just going to say, in some ways, the least objectionable Gynax sequel that could get announced. Like,
it's true.
Right.
You're not here for this ugly yet beautiful world 2.
Like, we've seen how Fooly Cooly 2 and 3 went, so, you know,
right.
Nothing would strike more fear into my heart than the words Gurren Lagann 2.
Oh, God.
So really, Panty and Stocking 2 is the least bad outcome here.
I mean, season 1, joke or not, literally ends on a cliffhanger, right? So,
what's funnier, if they acknowledge the cliffhanger and follow on directly from it, or if they just ignore it completely?
Completely, I'd say completely ignore it.
I am so sure they're just going to ignore it. Like they'll acknowledge it, but I am so sure they're just going to like skip right past it.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're also joined by Zigg, as you just heard.
Yes, I'm pleased to announce Gurren Lagann 2. This time it's all about jigsaws, baby.
It's, oh God, what would you, I don't even want to think about what Gurren Lagann 2 would look like, so let's just move on.
So stop saying its name out loud. Don't speak that energy into the ether.
Jigsaws.
When is the 20th anniversary coming up? No, never mind. All right, yeah, we're gonna stop. I don't want to speak. I don't want to speak into existence here. Let's move.
Gurren Lagann 2, Childhood's End. Yeah, great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw this year. One of the great anime films of 2024.
Okay. Hear me out here. Shin Gurren Lagann.
Fuck off.
Okay, so 2024, the year in anime.
I would travel to Japan to kill Anno in Minecraft if that happened.
So, we have our list of our top 10 anime, and if you're new here, if you're a new listener, we as the GLORIO crew collectively vote on our favorite anime of the year. We have our special patented weighted voting system that we've created to determine what are the top 10 anime. And
I feel like you made that up on a whim a decade ago, and then it actually worked perfectly, and we've not changed it since.
Yeah.
The only thing I've added
it's expertly designed to make sure nobody is entirely happy with the result.
Everyone is
doesn't that what makes a true top 10?
Everyone is not quite happy, but also not quite totally mad at it.
Right.
So
I guess just one thing I would like to elaborate on, because look, I've been listening to a lot of GOATY podcasts lately.
Okay.
Just to be clear to anybody who's listening, we do not do a lock everybody in the room for 4 hours to deliberate. That is not our style. We have a ranked voting system.
We did that one time and it sucked.
Yeah,
it was bad. I sometimes think about it, but
yeah. As someone who is very conflict averse, I want nothing to do with that. I keep all of the voting. I keep all the voting entirely anonymous so that everyone votes their heart and doesn't
so
feel
that you can tell you fix the results afterwards.
There is that. To be fair, yes, we have a single arbiter of the votes who verifies the results of the election.
Look,
I would generally trust Jill more than literally anybody else here. So.
Yes,
as my cover, I have noted. I don't think my number one has ever been the number one anime in our top 10. So yes. That is my cover, and I'm sticking to it. But yes. So and so every year we crank out our top 10 list here. But before we get into the top 10, something that we did last year, and I think may continue, is leaving some space to talk about anime movies that might have come out that year. Because we don't include movies. Like, our top 10, when we say top 10, is generally like TV length episodic series type things. So
I think we put an OVA on there occasionally or something like that.
Yeah, and even those are usually cut into 3 episodes or 6 episodes or something, right? But movies we generally talk about separately. And there was one movie in particular that I think we definitely need to talk about in the context of this list, because if we're just saying broadly what is the best anime, it's probably 3 out of 4 of our currently on the podcast best anime this year, and that is Look Back.
Great movie.
This is so.
Well, you got to be such a splitter, G. Just fall in line with the rest of us.
Yes. I famously, the Look Back hater, has logged in.
That would be if Peter was on right now. Well, I read the post.
Yes. Peter, we'll discuss more about your opinions on the fact later.
Wow.
But yes, this is of course the short film based on the one shot by the author of Chainsaw Man, Tatsuki Fujimoto. It is not Chainsaw Man at all, though. This is a
Shark Kick.
Yes, it's Shark Kick. No, this is a very personal story about a young woman's kind of her pathway to becoming a very successful manga artist, and some of the things that occurred in her childhood leading up to that, and
chainsaws,
sharks, not chainsaws. So I actually just watched this morning.
Oh god! I was gonna say, when we talked about it, you hadn't watched it,
because
I was about to ask when you watched it.
I wanted to watch it. I wanted to watch it before we did this post, and I just ran out of time. And so I am still raw off of this. So I will try not to get emotional talking about it. But it's that kind of it's that kind of movie. It's so short that I don't even want to get more into the plot. I would just say that, we did talk about this a couple episodes ago.
We have before.
Episode 174. You can go back and listen to that. And G, you also wrote a post about it, which I would recommend everybody go check out at theglorioblog.com. It's really good. As I think as a story, I've seen some people kind of take it at surface level, which as a story at surface level, it's still pretty good. But I think it's effective because in the short amount of time it has, it is asking questions more than telling you things, if that makes sense. And you know, the core premise is about, you know, being an artist and why do you make art, but you could like apply that to whatever you're passionate about, really. I mean, there are things specifically I think will hit harder for artists, but like in general, you know, why do you do the thing that you're passionate about? Why do you, you know, love what you do? And then also like looking back at, you know, what are, you know, who are the people that were, you know, in your life and decisions that you made leading up to this, and what does that mean to you? And not really answering those questions, really asking them to the audience to look at it, but through this one, you know, girl's journey to where she got to. And man, they just really, the amount of like emotional punch they managed to generate in such a short period of time is extremely impressive.
Oh yeah, I think like I do agree with you, Jill, that yes, if you wanted to just like analyze the bones of Look Back as a narrative, not only is it pretty rudimentary, you could argue many of the things Look Back has done have been done before.
Yeah, and it's I think it's a good story. I mean, it's short, right? So like, but
I think it's just to that point. I think like what Look Back does so well is that like it is selling you an emotion, maybe more than an actual narrative. Like it's
right.
You know, it is a movie that is demanding that you feel something. That you have like in the way that like it wants you to feel something about art, right? Like it's the whole thing about like this movie's focus is like, why do we do art? What does it mean to us, right? Like why do we do it, and why do we engage with it? And I think when you approach it at that level, I think that is where like Look Back really succeeds as like a piece of media, as a story. And yeah, it's just, I mean, again, I have written plenty about Look Back already, so yes, I don't want to dominate this with just like, yeah, guys, Look Back, it's really good, but
yeah,
I definitely wanted to recognize it just because I think, yeah, like, obviously, yeah, it's not part of our ranking because it's not a TV anime, so I definitely wanted to give it its due somewhere. Also, in weird ways, like, maybe for like this, like, collection of people specifically, this also in some ways gets to be the Fujimoto redemption tour, because I think many of you were not particularly impressed by the Chainsaw Man TV anime.
As someone whose only other frame of reference is the Chainsaw Man TV anime, I have not read the manga or anything. Like,
I think I read the manga up to where the TV anime ended.
Yeah, this was definitely a revelation, I think, on his writing as far as you know, what he's capable of. But yeah, and you know, I could see threads of like kind of good things in Chainsaw Man, but like, you know, it's Chainsaw Man, and then also we had our own problems with the adaptation that we don't need to rehash. But yeah. It was definitely interesting. It kind of makes me wonder which kind of makes me wish the studio did Chainsaw Man and not. But
right.
I'm going to ask you the question I asked G on the podcast before, or Jill, which is at the end of the second quote unquote timeline when she's being wheeled into the ambulance, and she says, "Oh yeah, I recently picked up drawing again." Is that real? The creative impulse cannot be suppressed, or is she just full of bluster, as has been shown previously?
Why not both?
Right. I mean, that's the thing. I keep flip flopping in my own head.
Does it matter? Like, it kind of like, yeah. I mean, they kind of go hand in hand, right? Yeah.
Not really, but it's like a question that turns in my mind, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to lean one way or the other, I would say that.
Yes, because I've seen multiple people say, well, like refer to it as obviously it's this one. Duh, it's just how it matches with the themes of the story.
I don't think it's obvious.
I know, but I'm saying I've heard multiple people say that for both answers.
Well, then I guess then we'll be on the record and say it's ambiguous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, see that I think of something that is one of the biggest strong points of Look Back is, again, it's putting stuff out there without that. I've seen a lot of people take a lot of different things out of it, and I think all of them are valid. Like there's,
Right.
it's just, it's like I said, it's asking questions and everyone coming up with their own answers is kind of I feel like the point. But
Yes.
Right. Like the final words in the movie, don't worry, it's not a spoiler, but the final words in the movie are literally, why do you draw?
Right. Yep.
Not the answer, it's a question.
No. Yeah.
And I think that is like in many ways the thesis point of Look Back is why do any of this, right? Like Look Back is like the sad lesbian version of that Third Strike Reddit post.
Why do I attack if they're just going to parry?
Yeah, why are you going to live if you're just going to die, right?
Right. Yep. So
why do I block why do I block low even though I know the overhead is coming?
Yeah, I don't know
when he has a resurrection super.
I don't know if anything else we're going to say is really going to do it justice. I'd recommend just go watching it. It is available on it's available on Amazon Prime Video. If you have Prime, you can just watch it, and it's only an hour long. It's subbed, dubbed in 8 different languages. They kind of went all out on it. So definitely go check that out. It's worth the time, and for my money, having only watched it a couple hours ago, it probably is the best animated thing I watched this year.
See, Joe, I was like, look, behind the curtain, I was like talking with Joe. I was like, look, man, maybe we should include movies. Like,
hey, look, we're probably talking about this more than we'll talk about it in our number 1 show, to be honest. So
probably
we're talking about just minutes on the podcast. We're giving its just due here. So
Look Back presents the top 10 anime of 2024.
There you go. All right.
I'm on a tradition.
All right. So let's get into our actual list of top 10 anime TV series that aired this year. I think other than the middle of this list, I feel like it's one of our more conventional top 10s. We've got some weird things in the middle, but like I feel like a lot of these shows will show up on other people's top 10s list, maybe in different orders or whatever. But we've got some big names on here.
This is the most normie our top 10 has been in a little bit.
Probably, I'd have to go back and look, but yes,
no Birdie Wings or Akudama Drives to be seen on this top 10.
Merely Mecha-Ude and Thunderbolt Fantasy. Look.
There are some weird ones in the middle, yeah. So, I'll just throw in as an interesting note a couple of really close calls. There was for the second year in a row, there was only 1 point between our number 1 and number 2 show, and basically 4 through 10 you could put in any order. They were so close. Like after the top 3, it was pretty close. So how much the order is important, I don't know. The point is they all made the list. So
it's an honor just to be nominated.
It's an honor just to make the list. Yes. So let's start with, at number 10, we have Frieren Beyond Journey's End. This is probably one of the most popular shows on this list, so I probably don't need to tell people what Frieren is, but it is a fantasy anime,
tournament-based battle manga.
Yeah. It is a fantasy anime.
It is currently on indefinite hiatus.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it is a fantasy anime about a very old elf woman who has seen a lot of things. She's seen all her friends, die and all that, and she's kind of on her own journey after that. She was part of like the original big hero party that saved the world, right? And now 80 years have gone by or whatever, and
it's also a show about extremely large articles of food.
Yes. It's a show perhaps about a lot of things, but
I think at its best, right? Like that like Frieren is this really great melancholy journey of self-reflection, right? Like what does it mean to have a life well lived? What does it mean to have regrets? And
I'm pretty shocked it fell this far down the list, honestly. Like
really?
I know why, but like...
yeah. So focusing on kind of the positive for the moment, what G's saying, like that's the strengths of Frieren, right? Yeah. Like especially in the first half, which did so Frieren kind of landed in the weird spot where it was airing in the middle of years, right?
right.
which is weird for our top 10 voting. So
across fall 2023,
it went across
into
fall
winter 2022,
right 2023 into winter 2024. So, we kind of didn't really vote for it last year because it was literally still airing when we were doing our top 10s, right? So, and the first half is where most of the good stuff is, where you're getting, these very nice episodic, Frieren visits as a village in her past and, remembers her time with Himmel Hero and, go ahead, Zigg.
I was going to say, I think the thing which struck me about it is that it's emotional and wistful without being cloying or excessively weepy. It's honest in its emotion, and it's also, I think it counterbalances well its kind of sadness with humor as well. The characters are funny, they work well together, and I think that the show in general really nicely balances the sort of the nostalgic and wistful parts with the current day arc, with the with the new party that's forming. I think it has a really honest approach to the emotion it gains, and that's refreshing. In anime, a lot of the time milks emotion using very cliched tricks, and that happens occasionally here, but I think for the most part, I think it comes by its emotions very honestly, and that's a strong point for me.
As we've seen in many other shows that attempt this, that is a difficult balance to strike, right?
Yeah.
Ira, what you're gonna say?
In a world where every fantasy anime now is some kind of isekai or I'm in the game kind of setting and story, Frieren is an example of what some of these could be, because it is clearly very game inspired and informed. The hero party went to beat the demon lord, etc., but without dipping into making everything super literal and shitty, right?
I think a big part of it is also those components are not fundamental to the story that Frieren is telling.
They are just the setup, right?
Yes, they are the set dressing to which the story is being told. And that's not to say that, Frieren could be any setting and the story would still be good. I think, much of it is in the fantasy milieu it is operating in, because, we talk about nostalgia as a driving part of Frieren's emotional through line. I mean, I think a big part of that is also it is leveraging the sort of gestalt cultural nostalgia we all have for fantasy, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think at its best, Frieren, this is the thing Aaron and I kept talking about while watching Frieren is in some ways this is kind of Frieren kind of is when certain JRPGs give you the chance to walk through the overworld one last time after you beat the game.
Yeah, and you talk to all the characters.
Exactly, right?
Fantasy is an inherently backwards-looking romantic genre. I think at its best, it is very in tune with that particular strain of emotion.
Yeah,
for sure.
So, yeah, and all that's great, and I think that persists through the whole series, but primarily mostly in the first half that we get a lot of that. And
yes,
I mean, I'm trying to stay positive, but we do have to mention, we're talking about
man.
We're talking about why this dropped to number 10. It's really the second half it's the part that aired this year, right? Which we were all kind of more down on because it
G and I warned y'all. We warned you.
Yeah.
We warned you about stairs.
The mage test arc fucking sucks, man.
It's fine. If at the time I was this is fine as this is this arc, and then we go back to business as usual. Then this was a fun detour for a little bit, and then
I don't think it ever becomes actively bad, but I think the thing that's most disappointing about it is that it's so conventional. It is for a show that up to that point had been so good about avoiding easily predictable cliches and familiar character archetypes. It's just all of these anime cliches drop into place at once. It's not just the trade. It's not just the tournament arc. We have suddenly the two girls, the problematic waifu, the power levels, all of that.
The most sauceless evil woman ever conceived. Like,
Yeah,
Jell and I, as like the evil woman connoisseurs here, are utterly.
I'm over there in the back.
Yeah, all right, fine. The three of us unimpressed by what's her name?
Ubel.
Ubel, yes.
Yeah.
And look, like I said, I don't think it ever gets bad.
Zigg, I think I agree with you, and I think my opinion is just inevitably colored by how the manga has progressed since, right?
Right, which is obviously something which I can't account for in this case, but it is unquestionably disappointing. It's more disappointing than it is bad, but the fact that it falls from such great heights to kind of just being competent shonen fodder is in some ways kind of worse than it getting bad. So it becomes uninteresting.
Yeah. I'm really, really curious if they announce a Frieren season 2.
It's already been announced, hasn't it?
Oh, has it?
I thought it has.
Is that just going to be? Is that just going to be like fucking 24 episodes of the Golden City? Like, is that
has to be, right?
Oh my fucking god! That's
I'm automatically wary of anime about Golden Cities.
Season 2 was announced, but not had with no other information. Right.
I just because like again, I don't mean to color people's perception of Frieren as we know it now of what has been shown in the anime, but again, it's like I think Iro and I cannot decable ourselves from the knowledge that like a hypothetical season 2 is just going to be the mage test arc, but for 26 episodes.
Boy.
Yeah, I do think as a net whole package of the first half and the second half, it's still a good anime, and particularly if you are really wanting to watch some fantasy anime that's not isekai trash for the most part.
Even the conventional stuff is a clear cut above the vast majority of what we get.
Assuming you've already watched,
made the list for a reason.
Assuming you've already watched the number 1 show on our list, this would be the next non-isekai fantasy show to watch.
Oh baby.
So we're not. I mean, obviously, it's in our top 10 anime, right? Like, so we're not saying it's a bad show. It's just a little disappointing in the back half of where they go with it. And if I'm really thinking about it, there were still some cool things that happened in the second half.
They occasionally go ham with the animation, which is great. It's always appreciated there.
It's I think it's more that it was not what they took away the things that we loved about the show, right? Like, and replaced
like I said, it didn't become bad. It just sort of flattened the curve,
right?
Really.
Yeah, So, anyway, it's still a pretty good show. Worth checking out.
Yeah.
Let's move on to at number 9. We have the Apothecary Diaries, the show that came out of nowhere and blew up on us. Yeah. We just, for reference, I obviously you may be a first time listener out there right now listening to our top 10, but we literally just talked about this in the last episode, in our preview episode, because season 2 is happening in the winter season. But I keep kind of referring to this as like the little show that came out of nowhere, because I think maybe just in my brain I wrote this off as another one of those shows, based in some time period where women couldn't do anything. But this girl, she found some, niche job, like being an apothecary.
She gambled her way to the top.
And gambled her way into her
Except
own
she's a little like gremlin creep.
I think this show had the best faces of the year, and that's up against some really tough competition.
Yeah, there's some tough competition.
Ooh, I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, let me think about that.
It's up there, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. We got some shows in the top half of this list that have some very good faces. It's a tight competition.
Me explaining RuneScape to the girls is one of the all-time screen caps. Is all I will say.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean this. So I'll defer to you guys because you've actually watched it, but it seems like this has really taken off.
It's funny, right? Because like I think in this crowd, yes, Apothecary Diaries is the little show that could, whereas I think more mainstream, more holistically, Apothecary Diaries is a pretty big deal, right? Like it's
quite popular.
I saw a lot of marketing for this when I was in Japan.
I'm not saying it's not popular. Like I'm very aware of how popular it is because I guess for me it was like, and maybe this is just from watching too much.
But not a
anime
show
over
that
the
traditionally
years.
hits. I think at the GLORIO.
Right. I feel like I've seen other shows like this that did not blow up like this, and it's like this is the one that blew up.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, I'll let you guys talk more about why it's good and whatnot, though, because I didn't actually watch it. But yeah,
I think this is one of those shows where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Really, I think that there's some good historical drama, there's some good detective stuff, there's some fun character building, there's some goofy comedy. And I don't think any of those elements are truly exceptional, but they're put together into a really enjoyable package.
I think that's a very. I would definitely back that up.
Yeah.
I think Apothecary Diaries is, and this is not like trying to damn it with faint praise. I just think it's like it's solid to good to occasionally great in almost every like area it deals in. Like it's procedural. It's sort of police procedural mystery solving is good enough, right? The inter-character dynamics are good enough. They're likable enough, right? The antics are fun enough, right? Like there's like nothing in the Apothecary Diaries that like really, has me falling out of my seat, but it's very charming. It's very well made. It is ultimately a very likable show, I think.
I think it's so important that they gave Mao Mao actual personality, because the show is anchored around her. Obviously, she is the title character, but it would be, we see so many of these dramas slip into kind of like bland, boring, wish fulfillment main characters, and like to give her a fully rounded personality of her own. She's occasionally a bit weird, she's occasionally a bit spiky, she's occasionally dumb, she's occasionally clever, just really firmly sets the tone for everything around her.
Right. And as somebody who watches this and likes Mao Mao, but obviously I am not the demographic that is going to be self-inserting into Mao Mao, so to speak. Like a thing I like is also like, yes, she does kind of have that MD House smug prick solves everything kind of personality.
I'm always right.
But I think
but is also a massive girl failure.
There's that, and I also think there's an element of like, it doesn't, like Apothecary Diaries is like, look, this ain't gonna be my like Romance of the Three Kingdoms. This is not gonna be my hard hitting historical Chinese drama. But I think the show does enough to like remind you that like Mao Mao is somebody who is operating within a system, like a highly regimented system, and her position and privilege allows her like a maneuverability that a lot of women from her periods would not be able to enjoy. But like it is not like she just kind of like big dick strut into every room and be like, that's the problem's over there, officer. Like there is an element of like she has to solve problems within the framework that she has been born into. And I think what makes it work for me as well.
So I think the kind of like, because obviously this is not a true historical drama, it's set in a sort of pseudo history, but I think they use the kind of like historical / world building aspects well, which is they pepper the narrative with flavor. They give us just enough of the historical world building aspect to kind of like color the story and throw up natural roadblocks and assumptions that we in a modern day set story would not have, and there's just enough there to remind you and to sort of kind of grow up around the edges of the story. And I think that's a good strength of the show. Like the setting stuff is present enough to make a difference, but not so present that it feels like you're sitting through a world building session or something like that.
Yeah it's pretty good. I think okay. It's just was a good, reliable baseline for a while this year.
Yeah.
It may continue to serve that role admirably in winter 2025.
Though, as I've said, I'm not sure where... I do not know off the top of my head where Season 2 will go, specifically.
Yeah.
But it's probably fine.
We will see in like a week from now.
God, yeah.
Not even maybe like
we may even be talking about it by the next podcast. So.
Yeah. So, all right. Let's go to number 8, Natsume's Book of Friends.
Is this the obligatory show that nobody present has watched, but it has made our top 10?
We have reached the awkward part of the podcast where
Artemis is not here to defend her honor.
I will say that, like, it really feels like that there has been a groundswell of appreciation for Natsume's Book of Friends this time it's come back. You know, like, I've seen talk about it in the various places that talk about anime. It really feels like kind of that people have actually kind of come out of the woodwork to say, no, actually, the show's great.
I think even though this is season 7
is the good one.
Yeah. I think there was a little bit of more of a gap than usual since the last season, so that might be it. But yes, this is the very long running and perhaps the premier, like, I hate using this term, but it's very convenient, Iyashikei healing type of show about, a boy. He has this book from his grandmother that has like all these different spirits and yokai bound to it, and he's trying to release them all. And so, you get sort of episodic adventures where, you get different backstories. Some are more lighthearted, some are very heavy and serious with all these different yokai and all that. And
lots of cool traditional Japanese monster stuff.
From what I'm told, it can get pretty heavy, but I'd recommend. So we did just talk about this 2 episodes ago, I think, episode 176 with last time Artemis was on, because we haven't talked about the show. Season preview or season
wrap up.
No, it was kind of the wrap up because we weren't going to have time to do a wrap up this season. But and also by the time this episode of the podcast goes out, her very GLORIO year-end post will be out, which is entirely focused on this. So I'd encourage everybody to go read that. I'll take one quote out of that, which I think may sum up the mood on this, is where she said, it will only ever make you cry in a way that's constructive. So
can't ask more than that.
So even though it gets into some heavy themes, it's all for the purpose of saying something and not just misery porn, bad things happening for the sake of drama type of thing. So it's season 7. The anime has been running for, I think, like more than 10 years, and also the manga has been running for like 20 years. So you probably don't need me to tell you what this is, but I think it's the first time that we've ever actually acknowledged it in our top 10 here. So
right. And of course, I think like by the time this recording is out, there should be multiple instances of writing about the show from Artemis on the blog, right? So she has a post pretty much dedicated to it that will be out by the time this is going out. So once again, check us out at theglorioblog.com for more. But all right, let's go to number 7, a show that might be number 1 on a lot of other people's lists, but let's talk about Dandadan.
Cool. Yeah, sacrificing our indie cred forever by listing this.
Perhaps
we put a shonen we put a shonen Jump anime in the top 10. Like I think
several times.
So we've done it several times.
Yeah, I mean, because we are anime hipsters, a lot of times the big name Shonen Jump shows do not make it onto our top 10 list. But what if this one was good?
Whoa.
I'm kidding, of course, but no, Dandadan, is again, this is super pop. This is like arguably the most popular thing on this list here. So it's a pretty big hit. We've talked about it extensively since it aired this season, but it is, about a boy and a girl who are interested in aliens and supernatural things, and they get tied up in getting their own superpowers and dealing with those things happening around town. They pick up a few new party members. The main girl has a hot grandma that looks very young. Just good times overall. I think what we've been saying, I'll take from my perspective anyways, what makes this different to me has been the sort of relationship between the main two characters, and how they handle the characters more so than the action, which the action is incredible, don't get me wrong, but
it sure is.
there are other shows that have incredible action that I'm less interested in, right? So
True.
It just feels like a pretty good, well-rounded package, even if I don't necessarily like the new characters that have popped up in the last couple episodes, but that's another story that we will discuss when season 2 comes around. But what do you guys think on Dandadan?
I mean, I think I'm broadly going to echo what I said last time we talked about this when I was on the show, which is I think the show's good. I enjoy it a lot. I think almost everything about the show I like is the audio-visual presentation. I think the story is fine. I think the characters are fine. But the thing which really stands out for me is kind of like the staging, the animation, the music, all of the presentational aspects of the show. And, that doesn't mean I think the show is shallow or anything like that, but I think, it's a combination of the original manga's style and the way this animated version has been presented by Science Saru, which really stands out for me.
Yeah.
And I think, style can be storytelling, and I think in many ways it is in here. So, I'm not necessarily contradicting you, so to speak, but I would say, to me at least, the standout thing to me here is the look and feel rather than any of the storytelling aspects.
Yeah, to be clear, I specifically like the characters. The story is very like standard. We're hunting aliens and yokai and stuff, right? But like, or we're
you're now detective of the spirit world.
Yeah, right. But yeah, and I and yes, I appreciate the technical aspects and all that, but that's and how about Science Saru as like big name?
Yeah.
No longer the like little artsy.
Can't wait for Sanda.
Is on their way to becoming the next premier adaptation studio.
Yeah,
apparently.
I'm really excited for what this means for UA Deco too. Honestly, like I think.
Yeah, but
hey, look, Ken season 2 any day now, right?
Yeah. Trust.
Science Saru's Spirit Circle.
Yeah.
Oh man. You should have spoken that into reality. It's never going to happen. You're just making yourself sad.
No, it's fine.
I'll just say one more time. This is another studio I felt like maybe they should have done Chainsaw Man. But
hey, look, I've seen the PV for the movie. Now that they fired the TV director and they brought in like a new guy, it does seem like they're.
I knew that they switched directors, but did they literally fire the TV?
No,
director?
I don't think he was fired, but he did visit. He did publicly leave Mappa after the anime.
Yeah.
Did not say why, but it's
interesting.
The trailer does
like rules of harassment on the internet. Oh.
Yeah, the trailer did have some mood to it at least, right? But
anyways, we're talking about Dandadan here.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I echo you guys. Like when I first gave the original Dandadan cell, I was definitely more kind of just frameworking it as like this is the one you want to pay attention to because like this is going to like occupy a very obvious power vacuum for a very specific demographic of anime viewer. And I'm not going to pretend like that's a hard call to make, but it felt to me very obvious at the time. Oh yeah, this is going to be the one that like swoops in and like takes up oxygen in the room.
Well, while Jujutsu Kaisen is stepping back, like something.
And I guess the thing that right, yes, and I think to its favor, right, compared to like perhaps a Jujutsu Kaisen, a show that we've spoken plenty about in the past as well, right? Like
yes.
I think, like yes, Dandadan is good, right? It's capital G good, right?
Yeah.
It's good enough. It's the characters are likable, the action is fun, and I think in some ways the reason that maybe. I mean, in some ways, it is occupying the exact spot on this list that maybe makes a lot of sense, right? Of it is well-made entertainment.
Yes. And to be clear, that's not damning with faint praise. It's very hard to make good, wide demographic entertainment, And honestly,
clear,
I think
Shonen Jump makes like a dozen of these every year, and there's a reason we only pick one or two.
I think it's kind of amazing that something this popular and this geared towards a mass market is actually as good as it is. I think it's nice for something popular to be good. That's always a good thing. And
I know, we're usually quite suspicious of such things.
Yes.
I mean, it's just like, I guess I think about it from the context of, and to be clear, I agree with you guys. I think about it in the context of like our particular relationship with like weekly Shonen Jump anime adaptations, right? Like you could go as far back as like Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, The Elusive Samurai, Chainsaw Man, even, right? It's like I don't think, here's the thing, I really don't think any of us here are too snobbish for good shonen, right? I think it's just what becomes popular, especially in the last like number of years, has not always resonated strongly, I think, with our crowd. Like, for some reason or another, right? And so it is nice to like have a big, flashy, kind of dumb shonen that's well made and popular, and go, yeah, no, I like that one. Yeah, I hope they make more of it.
Yeah.
It's nice when lots of people are into the thing you're into.
Yeah.
Yep. So, I mean, not surprising at all. There's more of that on the way. Iro, did you have any additional thoughts?
Right, it's continuing into summer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. A real weird place to leave off.
This is... Yeah,
honestly, kind of an odd place just to do an episode cliffhanger, let alone a season cliffhanger.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I talk about this a little bit in my own year-end post. This is like a really noticeable problem, I think, with how anime is being produced right now. Like, because you have to think, like, this is a little bit of the heavenly delusion problem of when you're reading the manga and, like, the next chapter is just next week, right? Like, it's just you are following this like concurrent story that is being updated as you are consuming it, and you don't really have these like huge gaps in time between like when you're engaging with it.
You did not have to sit with this cliffhanger for 6 months. You had to sit with this cliffhanger for 7 days.
For 7 days a week, right?
Yeah.
And I think there are elements of how this last episode of Dandadan ends that are going to be really weird for people to sit on for 6 months. Like, Jill, you kind of like mentioned, not really liking the new characters, and like, I agree. I also did not like many of the new characters in Dandadan, but also, I kept reading it, so eventually I figured out what their deal was in like, I don't know, 7 to 8 chapters from now. But for you, that will be halfway through next
6 months from now, right? Yeah. So,
and I think that like it's like
we've barely gotten to know the new characters is the thing. Like, they've basically only appeared for one arc each, and yet we're left, hanging for 6 months with this negative impression of them because they haven't had a chance to develop in the same way our main characters have.
Yeah.
So, maybe it won't matter 6 months from now, but in the meantime, it's a weird spot. But we will see come summer how that goes. So,
also just point out, because we kept speculating about it, like, yeah, it's just a regular season of TV anime. They're not doing the movie thing.
Right.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah. So, all right. Let's move to our number 6 show. Brave Bang Bravern. Crunchyroll officially cut one bang off the
Cowards.
The title, The Cowards. I mean, keep in mind that this is one of 3 shows that wasn't even licensed at the beginning of the season that they aired. So, maybe we're just
well. Now that we know that Crunchyroll is run by incompetents and idiots.
Like, come on, we knew that already.
It makes a lot more sense.
We've confirmed what we already knew on that, but yes. But
I am of the opinion that a show of this magnitude requires 2 bangs in the title.
Yeah. It does. The only exception I made on this list of not keeping the official English title is our number 1 show, which we'll get to. But yes, Bang Brave Bang Bravern, as God intended, is another show that kind of came up out of nowhere on us. On this one.
Well, I think we mentioned it a few times, like in the lead up of like this looks kind of weird.
Yes,
Right.
Eero and I have. I'm not going to pretend like we called our shot because we did not. I think we were all caught off guard by Bravern.
We toyed with the idea like beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we were both like giving the like, oh, Barney's making this?
Well, what if?
Yeah. What's with that logo?
Yeah.
The thing is that like Obari has made a lot of crap over the course of his long and illustrious career.
Okay,
like you were talking about Kawamori a couple of episodes back. Obari is almost as illustrious and almost as long tenured, and consequently has made almost as much complete garbage.
I mean, I'll say this straight up: like Obari is one of the greatest like animators to ever do it. Bravern might be his only good show.
Yeah.
I don't like a single thing Obari has ever directed. I don't think he's a good director.
It's almost as if those might be different skill sets.
I mean, look, we talk about this every time Yoshinari comes up, right?
Right.
Like, yeah.
I will say that Yoshinari's case is a much less acute case of this happening because his directed shows are at least pretty good most of the time.
Yeah, fair enough. Yes. I think. So I think that's why Bravern is such a delightful surprise on multiple levels, right? Like, look, let's not pussyfoot around it. Look, if you've somehow not been spoiled on Bravern yet, I salute you. Why are you listening to this? Shouldn't you be like living like in a monastery in a mountain somewhere? But
I mean, how can you not have been spoiled when the show is called Bang Brave, Bang Bravern? For goodness' sake!
Yeah. Like, hey, look, they tricked me for the first like
the game away
minutes
there.
Of that episode of the first episode. But yeah, like I think this being this like big lovable like parody send up to like super robot anime, like it's a lot of fun, right? Like, and I think compared to a lot of like less thoughtful parodies of super robot anime, because here's the thing, right? I think we've all seen many parodies of super robot shows. Like,
I mean, there are far more parodies of super robot shows than actual super robot shows these days.
It's a stock joke at this point, right?
Like, exactly, and I think
it's like the bad Sentai parody. Anime,
right? Yes, yeah. Right. Like, I think Bravern works so well because like. The jokes are clearly jokes written by people who like don't do anything but think about mecha anime all fucking day. like these are jokes that are so like deeply entrenched in like being a certain type of mecha sicko, and I think that is what makes the
nobody
jokes
can
really
write burns as savage as somebody who truly loves the material.
Yeah, this is both a parody and an homage, right? It is not just a parody. It is also, I think, showing a great amount of love for the genre, right? I think that's very clear.
Perhaps it's more correct to say it's kind of a postmodern homage than a straight up parody, because I
think I would still kind of put it in because they do some very like intentionally funny type of gags based on your knowledge of mecha anime, right? But like things like in the first episode having the actual theme music playing in universe when Bravern appears, right, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it ends up being a very I guess the sort of elevator pitch is it starts as a real robot show and then you smash in a super robot. I think it's more of a super robot show, but the parody and the homage aspects of it are what kind of make it the fun.
They get a lot of mileage out of the broad gag of a super robot is here in a real robot setting, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and I think kind of speaking to that. Yes, like I think speaking to that, like very like it's a very modern satire. Is like I think like Bravern's jokes hits like it has such a consistent batting average because it has this very knowing eye about the genre, right? Like, for example, it's like, like people have been joking about the homoerotic subtext in mecha anime for like 40 years, right? Like as far back as Char Aznavour and Amuro Ray, right? Like people have been joking about this for so long. And I guess it's just like, to have a show just play that straight, like, Yeah, you know what? Yeah,
right. Not even like winking, nodding about it. Just
I remember this season there was a show that literally had men kissing. I was like, Bravern is still the most gay show that is airing this season.
Is somehow the gayer show. Yes,
it was great. Yes, they just totally run with that, which is part of the fun, right? But yeah,
for sure. I think probably because this was like a thesis I was kind of thinking about a lot with my year-end post. I think really the only thing I can really throw at Bravern is like, I think we said this when we were watching it. We'll say it every time it comes up for the rest of its existence. Like, Bravern deserved a lot more episodes than it got. I think you can feel the crunch in that. Like, not that we're like taking the plot that seriously, but like you can feel the crunch of even like the story it is trying to tell within those 13 episodes.
They had a very clear, there are X amount of evil robots, and then at the very end they had to like cram 3 into an episode, right? Because I think it was probably originally intended to be episode evil robot of the week, and
for a show that is riffing off shows that are 4 times its length, it is doing a remarkably good job.
Yeah, cramming it into one core, right?
I think that is why I wish it had, if not the length of the shows it is riffing on, something closer to that. Because I think like an indelible quality of those shows from that era is sort of the meandering repetition of the Super Robot anime. It is the like, wait, didn't we fight a villain kind of like this 6 episodes ago? And it's like,
it's not a Super Robot anime unless you fought like 30 recolors of the first boss or something like that.
You have to fill like 6 minutes of any given episode with stock footage, right? Like
Bravern weird interpersonal stuff.
Yeah, like Bravern should have been given like a shitty sidekick that nobody likes like halfway through the show's run.
So you could kill him. So you could kill him for drama like 3/4 of the way.
Yeah. Like again, the classic version, right? Everybody jokes about is like there should have been an episode where Bravern goes to the mall or has to get his driver's license.
Yeah, you could have made that. You could have made this a 2-core show, and I think it maybe would have helped a little bit. But so not only like I mentioned having the robot of the week, but then you could also fit in those kind of goofy things that I think would be I think we would have loved to see those type of episodes. So,
right. It does not have to be as under attacks this week. It can just be like, oh no, the subway's gone crazy.
But what if the subway went crazy because a monster attacked? Just saying.
Yeah, but in the end, yes. Yeah, right. So, yeah, that show was a lot of fun.
Done from a place of love, I think, is the main thing that I take away.
That's the thing about Obari doing it is he is one of the only people who is entrenched deeply enough to perhaps pull off something like this.
He's walked the walk and talked the talk, so to speak.
Yeah,
and I think also. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think we said at the time the fact that they're still letting Obari make anime is probably a good thing. But yeah,
yes.
At this point, he's just like calling in all the favors he's built up over like the past 30 years or something.
As he should.
Yeah. So, were you gonna say one more thing, G?
I was about to say, but I realized I was wrong. I was going to say, I think he's also one of the few people with both his tenure and still the ability to, like, not take himself too seriously. So, like, that's how a thing like Bravern can come to exist, right? Like Tomino's not going to make Bravern,
No, correction. Tomino is not going to make Bravern intentionally.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, there you go.
That's fair.
No, Tomio will make comedy. It's just
I think there is a certain amount of intentionality in his comedy.
There is. Yes, we
I'm being unfair, but you know what I mean.
Yes, but I think he's like I think Obari is one of those guys who's been here long enough that he has that knowing eye, but also he knows how to laugh at it, right? Like I mean, even Obari himself has gotten on social media and he has acknowledged the like sort of the like obviously it was an intentional stylistic flourish, but like he has a bemused reaction at times to just how how much like certain styles of his shots, you know, the Obari pose has been parodied, right? Like he knows that like his style is like synonymous with like a look and a feel and maybe even now a sense of humor, right? And I think that's what really makes it work.
I mean, I feel like in recent years I've started to see the Obari pose increasingly in shows that are not even remotely mecha at all.
Oh yeah,
yes,
like,
absolutely.
I feel like it has always been homaged and parodied in other mecha shows, but I feel like these days it's showing up in like romantic comedies and stuff like that.
It's starting to leak out into like the West as well, in the same way the Akira bike slide did.
Right.
Yeah.
Though less because of one specific thing being iconic so much as it is used everywhere.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is a fun show, and particularly if you are, if you have fond memories of mecha, watching mecha anime, as many of us do, it's worth checking out. Okay. Let's talk about Thunderbolt Fantasy Season 4.
Ah, yes, the 5th best anime of the year.
It's finally here, folks. Finally,
we've had Tokyo on the list before.
Yeah, we have.
I mean, GLORIO for the same reason. It's anime as fuck.
Yes, the GLORIO chat is cloaked in deepest blue. We finally did it.
Across the moon.
Okay, so I'm going to start here. This might be the season that, for me, Thunderbolt Fantasy went from utter disaster complimentary to utter disaster derogatory.
Maybe. I think that is a fair assessment. I'd rather open up with the good stuff first, but
I'm not ready.
Controversial take.
I'm not fully ready to swing to derogatory, but it is definitely a hot mess in season 4.
Yes,
which is hamstrung by the fact that they're leading up to the movie. But like we said, G, let's start with the good part first.
Yes, I mean, in many ways, I think it's here probably because like this is probably a vote as much for Thunderbolt Fantasy Season 4 as this is for Thunderbolt Fantasy. It's the
experience
seasons 1 through 3.
Yes, the legacy of Thunderbolt Fantasy. But as if you've listened, none of us picked up Thunderbolt Fantasy until quite late in the game. Even Season 3, which aired a few years ago, we were all. I think this was another one that
I needed subtitles that did not have everything in the phonetic Chinese.
Yeah, as somebody who watched episode 1 of season 1 when it came out, the subtitling was really dry and
it
took a lot of the energy out of it.
It's so hard to parse without having some stuff translated. You know,
this is a show where, again, if you don't know about Thunderbolt Fantasy, this is the Taiwanese-Japanese puppetry collaboration with Gen Urobuchi.
Yep. If you watched the Woodland Warriors on Toonami for the 2 weeks it was on Toonami, it's like that.
Jesus Christ. Yes.
Yes, all the people that saw that. Yes.
Dude, I never forgot about Woodland Warriors. So when I saw Thunderbolt Fantasy, I was like, oh shit, like Woodland Warriors?
My elevator pitch on Thunderbolt Fantasy, as always, is Jim Henson's Dynasty Warriors. Thunderbolt Fantasy. So season 4 is the first season and the final season of Thunderbolt Fantasy that we were able to watch concurrently. And I think it's like, this is the thing, right? It's like, if I'm really trying to put my feelings in aggregate about Thunderbolt Fantasy and, specifically season 4, it's like, I think it's very easy for the dread and the criticisms and the fears about the future of Thunderbolt Fantasy. I think it's really easy for those to creep in.
I wasn't trying to remember. The thing is, I wasn't even necessarily saying it as kind of like I dread the future, or like, oh, the quality has gone down the toilet, It's just that the mess became so overwhelming that it kind of swallowed the show whole, if that makes sense.
Maybe, yes. I mean, I've written enough about this in my year-end post. Right. Like, if you want my more like actual like critique of Thunderbolt Fantasy Season 4, it's there. I really am just here to celebrate it because, like, look, man, like nobody fucking does it like Thunderbolt Fantasy. Like,
it's true.
Like, we will never see something like this happen again.
Like, of all the shows on this list, Thunderbolt Fantasy is singular. Like, there is no show on this list, on this top 10, that is operating on the same like gleeful, verging on insane like wavelength as this show. Like,
so here's a question: how much of that do you think is aided? Like, how much of that like glorious madness is aided by the medium?
Quite a lot for me.
Quite a lot.
Right.
And I think like that's
absolutely
like,
I
yes,
agree.
like I think if you want to take the tact of like, well, you wouldn't like Thunderbolt Fantasy as much if it was an anime. It's like maybe,
I mean,
but that's not the point. It's
point,
puppets.
Right.
Yeah,
there's a lot of anime I would not like if they were live action, right? Like
exactly. Like
this is always the.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Go on, Joe.
Yeah, I mean the medium is part of the point of what you're enjoying it, right? Like,
yeah, I mean this is the stance I've always taken with Tokusatsu, which is in a very similar boat. That like the style is the substance, so to speak.
Yes.
Like you are doing it for the look.
Yes, and I think for Thunderbolt Fantasy, like yes, it's just the constant reminder of the physicality of puppetry, right? Like when a dude gets thrown back by a blast, a human being is throwing that puppet across a camera, right? Like across a soundstage.
I remember a review for the second movie somewhere that was just somehow the best part of this great movie is in the behind the scenes footage where a grown man hurls a puppet straight down at the ground with his full body weight.
Yes. Like
there's that
the
behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's that behind the scenes on the Fate Grand Order crossover where they are just like lawn darting that saber puppet through the air.
Oh yeah.
Like,
look, when Ryoga gets struck by a bolt of lightning and explodes in the OP, an actual talking lute is being struck by lightning and exploding.
Someone had to build a model and then explode it.
Look, they had to build a new Ban Gunha puppet for a 5-second scene. I will remind you that behind the scenes footage, there is a man taking a kerosene torch to Ban Gunha for the finale of season 3.
That puppet burned up for real.
We always popped whenever real fire shows up on screen. Right?
Yeah.
Like, so yes, I think a lot of it is the physicality, right? Like it's the melodrama, it's the action, it's the just delightful over the top nature of this wild wuxia adventure, and it is totally the medium in which it is communicated in, you know? Like
I think, you know, it has a lot of similarities to theatre, you know, in which that, like, you know, the characters are larger than life, you know, it's almost pantomime in a certain extent, you know, everybody is projecting huge, everyone is projecting hugely, like, everybody is incredibly over the top because you are playing to the stalls, you know, and it has some of that energy to it.
Their faces don't move, you have to over-ebox.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you know, like they have to do their big, exaggerated circular hand motion before they point at the camera.
That one pointing motion. That hand pointing motion. Right next to fist shake or lean to side and point forward.
We could only afford to build one animatronic hand, and we had it making a fist, so we must have the characters do that all the time.
But I do agree that, like, yes, like I think, you know, maybe we can get more to dissecting the plot points of season 4 as the movie comes around, but I do still think, just like as a piece of entertainment, like I don't think I have smiled more than at the highest highs of Thunderbolt Fantasy.
I absolutely agree.
There's nothing that happened this year that gave us more sheer joy than episode 4.
Is that the one where he turns up with the minigun at the end?
Yes,
yes,
just
like
incredible piece of cinema.
Truly, yes.
As a singular moment, I don't think there was. I mean, when I did my moments post this year, that was my number one moment because I don't think anything
tops it, man.
We were not prepared.
Sheer joy, like don't think hard. You don't have to think hard about it or anything. Just as it's happening on screen, just the pure joy that came from that. I don't think anything topped that.
Whenever we watch fantasy anime or something like that, you know, the joke is always, oh, what's the ultimate power? Somebody just pulls out a piece, and then like, oh no, they actually did that. Like,
what is this, some kind of heretical sorcery or whatever?
and he's just reenacting Predator, right?
Oh man, and just like the reaction, like I had, I rewatched the scene recently, right? Where you got like Tenko Kisho, or is it Kidatsu? I always get them mixed up, but Kisho's like, shit, man. All right, Kisho is like, shit, man. I gotta go back to the old me, and Scrooge McDuck pogo jumps into a cave.
Yes,
I would never. I thought I would never. I decided I would never reveal this invention that was too powerful until my dying day.
Motherfucker, you still built it.
Yeah.
He only intended the deadly mech to be used for peaceful purposes. Yes, Come on.
Look, it has the power to be a god or a devil. You know, it's like...
Yes, here comes your man-sized mech suit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
perfect.
As someone who basically watched season 3 and 4 back to back, I think there was definitely a drop off in terms of like
coherence,
the coherence, and even some of the dialogue writing and everything felt a lot more like info dumping and not like the nothing like Shofukan sitting down for tea with the Screaming Phoenix Killer and hashing out their ideals. Just a lot of like.
It's definitely some late era. It's definitely some late period Urabuchi.
It's
stuff.
like once it became a series and therefore necessitated having like a real plot in scare quotes. Like then yes, now we have to spend much more dialogue setting up the plot.
I think perhaps they got a little over ambitious on having all these interconnecting plot lines and. Finding one more giant gotcha for when Setsuwa and, like, it got maybe a little too big for its, premise, but...
If there's one moment I think that stands out, it's the bit where, like, what's the name? The two bad guys from the Divine Swarm, where they literally just say bye and then
walk
exit
off
from the story.
Yes. I mean, like I agree.
It's like a real truck driver's gear change in the middle of the story.
But I don't think any of that. Nothing takes away from just the spectacle and joy of watching puppets murder each other and
again as Iro and I described the Konko at the beginning of season 4, Muppet-like in its motions, right? Like it's even like Wasp and Spider's departure from the plot is like, yes, if I wanted to like actually talk about that seriously, it's really disappointing. But as a moment, it's hilarious.
I just think, and I hate to play devil's advocate here because it is such a fun show, but I don't think that being, incredibly enjoyable, like, shields it from legit criticism. And I think
that is why it's in the middle of the pack here, right? Yeah. Like I think it's.
Yeah, and I think this, and as Gel said, I think this was a problem in the third season that was partially plastered over by the fact that you had strong returning villains. You still had Roshin Kai. You still had 7 Blasphemous Deaths.
K-Guy was back.
Yeah,
they made a sexy K-Guy puppet.
But here, that was very good, yeah. But here, kind of like, it just feels like a whole mess of plot threads that just don't really end up going anywhere. And that means that the individual moments are still brilliant and amazing, but there's not the sense of satisfaction that you get from seeing a story come together.
Yeah,
and I have to be honest, and honestly, it did affect my enjoyment of the show.
Absolutely.
Season 4 is sort of in a lot of ways forced to pay the weight of its previous 3 seasons, right? Like it very much feels like a situation of like, shit, we set up way too much, and now season 4 has to be the most like blatantly mechanical a narrative has ever been in Thunderbolt Fantasy. Of it doesn't really matter, these characters have to be here for the plot to keep moving, so get them there no matter what it takes.
I think the Shofukan plot is an especially notable problem.
Let me jump in this big hole. It's connected to the demon realm.
Yes, I'll go back.
I'll float back up.
I mean, to your point, Zigg, yes, the Shofukan plot, like, he's not here most of the time, but they do make his moments where he shows up very cool.
They make them count,
it's a mess. It is a beautiful mess, but
in some senses, we wouldn't want it to not be a mess. It's just, it's a very delicate balance, and I feel the balance fell a little more on one side than the other.
Yeah.
I guess not to absolve it, but I will say, again, a recurring theme in my year-end post, but the reminder, right, that Thunderbolt Fantasy was supposed to have 5 TV seasons, right? Like, this is yet another casualty of the COVID schedule, right? The ways in which production have changed. My understanding is Thunderbolt Fantasy is not exactly a barn burner financially. Like, it is. Like,
and I bet the cost to make it is probably insane.
My understanding is yes, it's much more expensive than normal Peely shows, but also it has very positively affected their stock prices.
Yes,
I mean it's the very definition of a loss leader, right? It's a big flashy thing you put out to kind of cast a halo on everything else.
You know what? Before I probably would have never watched another Peely show. Now I'm maybe
correct. You already had, motherfucker. You referenced Wounded Warriors.
You know what I mean? Right, but
I think the point Eero is making is we are now, all of us here are now probably 10 to 40% more likely to watch a Peely show than we would have been 5 years ago.
Well.
But the point I was making is there's a lot of both financial and schedule production reasons for why it went from 5 seasons to 4 seasons. But nonetheless, I think it is it is yet another show where you cannot help but more in the reality of the world it was made in.
And I think
season 5 would have fixed everything, but I think there's probably a world where this plot probably has a lot more room to breathe with an extra 12, 13 episodes.
And, G, I think you're right. No show gave me more joy this year, in the individual moments. The highs are so high. Mostly because things that are just unbelievably stupid happen constantly. But, we are here to critique, and I think the critique has to be leveled at some point as well.
I think, I guess to sum it up, it's I definitely did not enjoy season 3 and 4 as much as I enjoyed 1 and 2, but, it's still a very fun show, and there's nothing else like it.
Absolutely.
Right? So... And I'm looking forward to. I really hope they pull out all the stops in the movie as they have with the pre. I think the movies have probably been really the highlights of the
the movies
series,
are
right?
generally the high points of Thunderbolt Fantasy.
Yeah, unlike the anime movie, the Thunderbolt Fantasy movie are actually high points.
Yeah, I think the Adventures of Fake Shofukan might still be my favorite part from the entire show.
That was amazing. Yes, so. I'm looking. I hope they pull that as much as the plot. I don't think they can save the plot in one movie, but if
they can still give us a really good time and they can. I think again,
it's not so much that I demand that the intricacies of the plot be resolved, but it's that I want to feel invested in what eventually happens.
Right. I mean, my hope. My realistic hope is that the third movie is a little bit like season 3, where if you stare at it too hard, it probably doesn't hold muster, but sheer bravado, keeps it in the good graces. If that makes sense.
Well, I mean, season 3 again, having watched the most recently out of everyone because I literally watched 3 and 4 back to back. Season 3 basically is bailed out by the amazing ending, right?
Yes.
So maybe they can bail this out with an amazing ending.
I mean, season 3 also has Roshinkai doing the Giga Drill Breaker as well. So you
don't like hot boy Ryoga fucking gesticulating all over these Konko.
Yeah, it was about time we had a microfiber wire sicko in this show.
Right?
Yeah, we need to fit that in there. But yeah, all right. Well, movie comes out in February. Who knows when we'll get to watch it? But
yeah.
We'll see what cam rip culture is like in Taiwan, I guess.
I'm gonna say hi. It's still China.
That's true.
Probably the best place or highest hope of getting it. But yeah, all right.
Yes, I mean, point is I think there's a lot to call out Thunderbolt Fantasy season 4 for, but also I think it earns its place here. On the weight of what a good time it is.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's talk about perhaps the biggest surprise on this list.
I mean, I think another show that honestly is here on the weight of what a good time.
Yes, the joy of watching. Right?
So watch as I turn into a huge hypocrite now.
I swear I will not accuse you guys of recency bias, but let's talk about Mecha-Ude Mechanical Arms.
Mecha-Ude.
You know how sometimes a baby just has bad vibes?
Whoa.
Sometimes an anime just has good vibes, and that's Mecha-Ude. You remember?
Go ahead.
What if cartoons were fun?
Yeah, it's because Mecha-Ude started as a kickstartered one-off OVA from a indie studio that mostly did music videos and stuff, and they're like, "We want to check out our original anime," and after that Kickstarter happened and they got their one episode, they now made a full one core TV show of it, and it's fun. It's really silly.
Sure did. Yes.
It's it's every show you've ever seen at the same time.
Well, most importantly, Mecha-Ude, we finally done it. We finally have an anime original that stays in its goddamn lane.
Right, that stays fun.
It has an expert knowledge of its strengths and weaknesses, and it plays to its strength and hides its weaknesses. And there's not much more you can ask for than that.
I don't. We could talk about. We could talk about the credit sequence about hiding its weaknesses.
Oh, it's so funny though.
Yeah, it is. No, it is hilarious, but yes, I think at its best, right?
But I'm talking more as a kind of overall philosophy, so to speak. It is a show that is acutely aware of what it is and what it is not, and it knows to focus on the things that it is good at.
Yes,
it also introduces 7 new characters in the last 2 episodes.
But you saying that, Zigg, that's what we've constantly been harping on with Sakugan and Saoki Bisco and I don't know,
Metallic
whatever.
Rouge.
Yeah,
Metallic Rouge,
whatever the hell other shows.
High Card. The point we're making is we have we've been doing this for a long time, and over the course of the many years we've talked about anime, we have seen a lot of anime originals come and go, and the number of them that we actually legitimately loved or still loved by the end, dude, you can count them on one hand, right? It's like Akudama Drive. It's like
Grand Belm.
I'll put in an honourable shout for Comet Lucifer here.
Sure,
that's pre-GLORIO era, I think.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Isn't it?
No,
I don't know, man. Some of those all blend together. Which maybe
the point is
it's a very rare thing.
We love anime originals, right? In fact, I think most of us are on record saying we wish there were more anime originals, but also almost every anime original we've ever even expressed the slightest mode of interest in has ended up being complete dog shit. There's no nice way to say it.
Even if they're not outright bad, I think it's very common for them to get overly ambitious and then not be able to deliver on the ambition, right? And
right,
for what you guys are saying, that is not the case here with Mecha-Ude, right?
I don't necessarily. You first, Jay. Go for it.
Okay. Well, I think for me, I think it's because Mecha-Ude wisely never sets the bar that high. For me, Mecha-Ude is the embodiment of the it called a fairly easy shot, and then it made it. And there's a part of me that actually has a strong soft spot for shows that are not that ambitious, but execute well on that limited ambition. And so, at least for me, that's why I have a lot of love for Mecha-Ude. This is not a show that is promising you the stars, but it is promising you a good time, and that is exactly what it delivers.
I'm going to go against that in a certain sense, because I think Mecha-Ude is ambitious in some sense. It's ambitious in the sense that they clearly targeted a mode of presentation that should be beyond the studio of this means, and I think that the show often strains against those limitations at times when the animation becomes, let's be charitable and say, limited occasionally, but they are trying so hard. There is so much love, there is so much joy they do so much with so little.
You want to cheer for Mecha-Ude.
It is such an inherently likable show, you know.
Yeah, I think when I was talking about ambitious, I was thinking more of like plot or themes or writing or something more so than perhaps technical execution. But
I will absolutely agree with G that it is not an ambitious show in those regards, you know. It is telling a fairly well-worn story with some fairly well-worn tropes, but that's not necessarily a barrier to being good, you know, if you can execute on those tropes well, and I think it does. You know, it's a great show that is just, it's really funny. It has characters who are likable, even if they're quite thin sketches. You know, you don't know much about them, but the things you do know, you like. You know, the action is great, even though they are pushing up against those technical boundaries. You know, it is a show you could show your kids or your friends. There is nothing creepy or skeevy or weird or, you know, it is perfect Saturday morning cartoon material.
Right. I think what I describe it as, like 4:30 after school on Toonami.
Yeah,
kind
of
has
show,
that
kind of energy to it.
And you know what? Sometimes that is exactly what I want. And this show delivers that with absolute precision.
Yes. I mean, again, that as I said, right, it calls its shot, and it does a very good job at hitting the target. I will say, a fatal blow against Mecha-Ude. They don't play the OP in the finale.
I know.
What the hell, bro? It's like you're aping trigger this hard, and you don't take the most obvious.
But also, the OP's not
crowd
great.
pleaser.
Like,
it's not, but
and it's certainly not great for action scenes.
All right, look, Zigg. I think we have all said our piece on the first Kill la Kill OP. It's still exciting when it plays in the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the finale, like you could
it's the spirit
even
of
a bad
the...
OP. Even a bad OP is still fun to hear during the grand finale.
Look, but they're still learning. You know, it's not.
I think, like, yes, it's a show I have a great deal of love for. I think, I guess it's like there is that element of like, and I do respect it. I do think it's very charming. There's also an element of. There does feel like there's a little bit of like that like indie desperation in how that show wraps up. It's like please greenlight us for season 2. Look at all the cool things that'll definitely happen in season 2. You greenlight us.
I think that desperation is kind of apparent all through the show, and I think it's part of what gives it its charm. You know, like I said, they're trying so hard. You know, like it is full of what to use a Britishism, it's full of kick, bollock, and scramble. You know, you can tell that they are doing everything, leaving it all on the table to try and get this show out there. You know, and I don't know, that just kind of is extremely lovable to me.
You know who also left it all out on the table? Studio Peely, when Shofukan's running on those razor wires.
It did happen.
I'm not going to relitigate it, but no, I think. I think the way we put it right is Mecha-Ude is arguably what it is in some ways more likable than it is necessarily like technically good on paper.
Absolutely.
And
you know,
I think that goes a long way. I think especially kind of because like as much as you know, look, we just went off on our whole like Mecha-Ude. It's like it's kind of like whatever or not whatever, but it is a show within this like specific framework. But also the more I think about it. You don't even get a lot of shows like this anymore, right?
No.
Like, and that's probably also kind of what gives Mecha-Ude a fairly unique quality in 2024.
Yeah. Like, for all the fact that it is so unashamedly derivative, counterintuitively makes it kind of unique, because as you said, you just don't get projects like this anymore. You know,
right. It's so, derivative of things that were like 10 to 20 years ago.
Yeah,
not right now.
It is so uncomplicated. It is so simple that it somehow stands out from the crowd.
I do wish that they were going to get a Sawano soundtrack. They had gotten one where he wasn't quite phoning it in so much.
Man, like they paid like the Sawano half rate, probably.
He had some pre-made tracks in the bid that they just paid for, right? Yeah.
There's certainly no I gotta find out who killed my dad in Mecha-Ude.
Gotta find out the reason why we have to cry.
Yeah. All right. Well, that show sounds fun.
Yeah.
So
Yes. Did we have time to talk about the credits montage?
We can bring it up real quick.
All right, it's the only chance, or only time we'll have. So
the ending of that show, the ending special version of the ending's playing. We're getting the slow like freeze frames of all the characters and how they're going about their lives after the show. And then about halfway through this montage, it starts showing things that are obviously major plot elements of a season 2 that will never happen.
Yes,
right. Oh no, and here's this shot of like Aki fighting a mysterious organization. Yeah. Here's the shot of
Alma came back, and now they're heading to another world.
Here's the shot of like the shady Big Four inside of the Mecha-Ude world.
Yes, the Mecha-Ude King is here.
Yes, the Spiral King.
Yeah, and also like here's their 3 heroes with their new outfits squaring off and ready to enter go through the portal into the Mecha-Ude world, and then it ends.
It feels like they put a pitch into the end credits of their own show.
It's what it feels like, right? It's.
I love it. I think it's great.
It's so funny.
It's very funny. It's maybe funnier than it is good, but it is funny.
It's been a long time since I've heard in a Bimbo Gamiga reference, but at the end of that show, they do a fake season 2 teaser where they're showing shots from the manga of plot points that we'll never see animated. But like, that just made me think of that. Yeah,
that's kind of what the credits of Mecha-Ude feel like.
Right, it's similar. I mean, in that case, there was actually manga chapters ahead that they were pulling from, but the odds of getting a season 2 were probably just as bad. Yes.
Also, can't let it go by without saying Katsuya Kanishi, possibly the vocal performance of the year. Just an incredible performance combined with some truly deranged animation.
It's a solid gag.
It's a great gag. Mm-hmm. I love this show. I think this show is great. Watch this show.
All right. So that's fun. Let's move on to something that is most definitely not something I would describe as fun.
Yeah, the fun section of this top 10 is over.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in number 2, but for number 3 we have Dead Demons DeDeDeDe Destruction.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like out of all the shows in this feels like it should be an anime of the year. Like it has that like prestige anime feel to it as far as like...
It was one of the few things that really felt like an event in anime this year.
It felt like it had like the type of scope you expect from an anime of the year, the level of ambition, and...
It is, yes. Like this is no, that's like way too fucking mean. I was about to like reference the Tim Rogers argument that like... The Last of Us was built in a lab to win awards.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
Like
I wouldn't go that far. You know what I mean, though.
No, but I absolutely see where you're coming from, Jay.
It feels like like a similar situation. Like yes, like this is the one that's meant to like this is this year's Pluto, right? Like this is the one you show people to go like anime's not for kids anymore, and I think. This is, I mean, hell, there's like here's like where my like pettiness comes up, right? Because like I think about like Dead Demons, and I have to like really try to remember the good stuff, right? Which is like, to be fair, 80 to 90% of Dead Demons is the good stuff, right? It's this really harrowing, raw examination of like human nature and like
living in a doomed world.
And like the relationships that like like. That bind us, right? That keep us sane and grounded as the world becomes increasingly insane. And man, they really fucked up with the anime, huh? Like they really fucked up by showing that episode 0, didn't they?
I'm not anywhere going to be near that harsh on it but generally, yes, that was a big mistake. And again, we had a very extensive discussion about this when at the end of was it last season in our season wrap up, where we talked a very long time about the how different our experience, because we had all 4 of us on that one as well, but how different our experiences with you two guys watching episode 0 first versus me and Zigg, who found out early enough to know not to do that. So and how much that perhaps changed our our overall expectations and feelings about the show.
Mm.
So, there is some blame to go for that for sure. But I think, again, starting with the positive and getting into, what you were saying, G. It is a really interesting study on like, what would we do if we knew that the world, we have the end of the world looming over our head, and the kind of very interesting look at like, well, for most of us, there's probably not a whole lot we could do about it, and
we're normal people. What can we do? We don't have any influence.
Like, I don't even think it's really a show about that. Like, I don't. Well, most of the people involved do not know that the world is ending imminently. It's not really how would you spend your last days thing.
No, yes, it's not. It's not that. But my point that I was getting to is that a lot of what people did is just continue living. What people are doing is just continuing to live their lives. But
right.
And then that gets into the being able to lean on each other and get through everything, which is like kind of the bigger. Picture message. But
I will say there's a certain extent of like, there is a little bit of the damning, like, again, to be clear, I don't think the show is like placing blame on any of its like principal characters, because yes, none of them are in positions of power or like have the levers of power to like demonstrably change the situation. But it also does get a little bit at that, like, people are just going to be inherently apathetic towards this stuff until it is happening right in front of them.
I mean, that is a trademark of Asano's work. Really.
Right.
I think about like every time that like the few times in which like, the characters are made aware of like what is being done to the aliens, and it's kind of just like a passing remark. It's just a, like they got the, like often happens in real life. You have the one friend in the group who really cares strongly about what is happening to the aliens and has gotten really political over it, and everybody else is like, look, man, I got bills to pay,
I got a lot going on.
I got a lot going on.
I think that sense of realism is so important to the story. I think that the greatest strength of Asano's writing and of this adaptation is to ground his characters in that sort of everyday relatability, and I think that's where all of the strength of the story comes from. I think that the contrasting nature of the mundanity of everyday life with kind of like the fantastical elements of the threat is so strong, I think, and like it's such an effective means of casting light on, the sort of social satire aspect of the story. I think that's just so good in this. I think that the characters are incredibly likable. I think that they're very relatable, and that their relationships are so well developed and well established that you do feel for them, even the ones who are obviously flawed, even the ones who are obviously evil. You have some insight into the reason why they are the way they are. And I just think that the interplay between the various parties and the various motivations, various ideologies they have is just so well developed. It's done subtly, it's done over time, and I think that sort of sense of humanity really percolates through the whole of the story. I will say that for me, this was the number one show of the year, and it was not close. I think this show is considerably better than pretty much everything else which came out this year. That's just me, but that was my stance on it.
I think I want to emphasize, I think we all think this show is good. I mean, it's our number 3 show on the list. We may have different degrees. Like I would not agree that it's the best show this year either, but I do think it's deserving to be in the conversation, because of all the things you just talked about, Zigg. I think for me, I mean, for whatever reason, like, in my head, cerebrally, I understand that the show is good, but in my heart, I just did not connect with the show. Like, I don't know why. It's kind of difficult to explain, but I did not have any kind of like emotional connection to it, and I feel like I should have. I mean, there are other shows that happened this year that I felt more emotionally connected to, that I felt like I was really, feeling the message. Whereas this, I feel like, as from an intellectual standpoint, like I was getting it, and I appreciated appreciated what was going on, but I think to what to G's point, like if I go back and try to think of like standout moments or something to me on it, like I'm not. It just kind of came and went for me, I guess. But that just becomes matter of opinions at that point. But
and to be clear, I completely understand where you're coming from there. I think I think I was in a similar place with Pluto last year. Where intellectually I recognise its greatness, but there's just something missing from the heart of it for me. And I think that this is a difficult show. It's not. It does not have strengths and weaknesses in the same way that a lot of more traditional media can be critiqued in. So I certainly don't. I certainly don't have any objections to people not putting it as our number one show of the year. But for me, I'm just saying that it connected to me strongly, and I think that there are people out there for whom it will connect strongly to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's crazy to say that this is, you could make an argument that this is the best show. I did personally have it there, but I think it's worthy of being in that conversation for sure. But yeah, G or Ira, I don't know if you've got further thoughts on it.
It was
Oh, you want to go first?
Yeah, it's probably similar to you, Gel. I thought it was quite good, but also, yes, it sort of was a show where I was like, that was really good, and then I moved it off to much like the characters in the show. I moved it off to the side because I had other things to think about. Right. But yes, it's like. And we talked about this extensively way back when. It's like the way it was presented, it did have we talked about how some of us put more weight on endings than others, and because of how the show was presented, the way I watched it, like the ending did not connect to me properly, right?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a valid critique. I don't think the ending was the best part either. There definitely was a whiff of cop out to it. And certainly it is one area where I could see the story being drastically improved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, yes, I think if I try to think about it holistically, like, yes, I think Dead Demons is, like, a very well-told story. I think, just, on a personal level, I'm not going to go as far as say it was a betrayal or anything, because whatever. Like, you write the story how you want to, but I think it's more like, my arc with Dead Demons is, like, episode 0 is a really fascinating standalone, like, speculative fiction vignette. And so, intellectually, I immediately latch onto episode 0 as, like, oh, what an interesting, really fascinating, like, story you are setting up here. And then it introduces Kaude and Oran, and I'm initially like, oh man, like, I thought we were gonna get some alien stuff. Okay, sure, I'll watch these two girls for a while. And then, to the show's credit, it wins me over. I remember being initially like, I'm whatever on Kaude and Oran. And then by the end, I'm like, I need to see if these two crazy kids can make it in this messed up world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the ending kind of doesn't follow up on either the intellectual or the emotional connection that I made, right? Because by the end of that show, I'm like, if this show can either address intellectually what I want to know about, like, this as a story about, like, an alien invasion and the ways in which the government responded, or alternatively, I want to see the conclusion to this really beautiful story about this, like, really wonderful special friendship. And then the show intention is like, nah, we're not going to talk about either of those.
Yeah. And again, I think that's a very valid critique.
And that is, like, the heartbreaker for me, right? Because like, I get it, right? Don't worry. Karude and Oran, they're part of the time stream now. They're everywhere. They'll always be with you. And I'm like, that I don't buy it, man. That doesn't work on me.
There's an interest, like, I see why that movie ended the story an episode early, basically. It's a much more natural conclusion. Like, it's certainly not a great ending there either, but it feels perhaps a more natural point to end on than all of the stuff we subsequently go through. But yes, I mean, like I said, you won't hear any argument from me. The ending is weak.
Yeah. Overall, though, I do think it's a really good show. It's one of the most, I think, interesting things to kind of chew on. certainly on this list, perhaps the most interesting thing to chew on as far as themes and things to think about. But it's
also worth saying, just a really nice production. Like, obviously,
and yes,
movie, it has the advantage there. But
I was going to mention it does. They did a great job production wise, making it look good, and
they do a very good job of capturing Asano's art style.
Yeah,
just don't turn on the captions on Crunchyroll. Some pretty well. Okay, try it for a little bit to see how hilarious it is. But the auto-generated captions that they had on it. But
that's right.
Yeah, I can't remember some of the good ones other than calling Kadode Kadudi. But there were some
that almost makes sense in universe, quite frankly.
Yeah, there were some really funny ones that, like, out of context, that were pretty funny. But it looks, it's a great production, great looking production as well. So definitely worth checking out. Okay. Perhaps
I'm undoing the collars. I'm opening the fence. I'm letting you guys free.
Okay. At number 2, we have Girls Band Cry.
Yeah. Now.
Hey, I guess to follow up on what I was just saying, perhaps I am getting sentimental in my old age and considering things more with my heart than my head these days. But I absolutely loved Girls Band Cry. It was, if we want to talk about designed in a lab, this is a show designed in the lab for me, in most ways. As far as
what if there was not one problematic waifu, but a whole band of them?
I am a sucker for, as well documented. I'm a sucker for dirtbag comedies with lovable assholes, and I'm also a sucker for band stories.
Yeah,
and this is
I think it was a pretty brave artistic decision to make an entire anime about fighting in restaurants, but to their credit, they pull it off quite magnificently.
Yes. This is a combination of both of those things, and I very much enjoyed it. But I think,
we were all surprised by this, right?
Yes. So first of all,
this is a big surprise this year.
This is another one that was not even licensed when it came out, and only just recently got added to Crunchyroll because I think it became. I mean, I don't know how popular it got, but popular enough where
it generated some buzz. I'll say,
yeah, we were enough that it's extremely rare that Crunchyroll would go back and get a license 2 seasons later, right? So that must. Going up a little information we have, that seems like there must be there was enough buzz around it. But
yeah, I mean, oh my god, we didn't even call it out. Like, just real quick.
Did we not say the name?
No, not that. Crunchyroll didn't even license Thunderbolt Fantasy Season 4.
Despite right. They didn't license that either. So
despite licensing the first 3 seasons, like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's weird. Because the other 2 shows with Bang Brave Bang Braver, and they didn't have it for like the first week or 2, but I imagine that was probably some paperwork or something that needed to be filled out. But the Thunderbolt Fantasy, as of right now, is still not licensed anywhere, even though Crunchyroll has the movies and season 1 through 3.
Yeah, I mean, the point I was bringing up is like
now we have to fly to Taiwan every week as well as our regular trip to Japan as well.
But point I'm making is this year is the year of Crunchyroll being caught with its pants down, like,
wait, you told me after
times.
Is it though, or is that every year?
Tell me after establishing a monopoly, they don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah, it's almost like it's exactly that.
Yeah, Anyway, they did eventually add it. I think a couple months ago. But anyway,
but not before you could buy it on hot streaming services.
Yeah,
I did. That.
I did buy it on. So hey, I'm putting in the support for this show. But anyway,
you're supporting the show.
Girls Band Cry. So there is the core sort of comedy aspect to it. I'll mention it is all 3D, but they managed to like have amazing comic timing and animation that really lends itself. Like I feel like it was actually helping the production. Obviously I'd prefer to have it hand animated, but like
I perhaps wouldn't go that far. But I
didn't feel like the 3D was a huge detriment to the show as I would have in the past, and in fact they kind of made good use of it where they could in some scenes as well. So I think that really helped as far as like the comedy aspect, and having these sort of lovable dirtbags that are kind of awful people, but you still love them anyway is a thing I very much love. But they also work in like other, once you get sort of the band story as an allegory for pursuing your dreams and all that stuff, they get into some of those big questions of when do you decide to really go for it and pursue in this case music, but an artistic a creative career of some kind, and when do you just say I need to just get a real job, those kinds of questions. And in addition to just the group dynamics of different people with different goals trying to come together. And there's I'm not going to say, I'm never going to call this a deep show, but there's more going on to it than you might think.
No, for sure. Like,
it doesn't have to be deep, but it is relatable.
Like I would make the argument that, like, in a good ways, right? Like, that Girls Band Cry is kind of, I mean, within the context of what anime can be, it's like probably one of the most cynical of the like cute girls doing cute things shows that I think we've seen in some time. Like, yeah, they still, I mean, look, they're still, well, like, they're a band, they're a relatively successful band, or at least in universe they are portrayed as like relatively decent at their job, right? Like, it's so like there's still the like fantasy of it, but like it's a show that like is not afraid of like recognizing that creating art, a little bit like Look Back, is like a very difficult and demanding thing, but also like there is kind of this primordial drive to do it, right? Like, the thing they constantly get into with like Nina is like, she literally like kind of like, I mean, she kind of like says as much, right? Like, she could not live, like, she feels like she can't be human unless she makes music, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't watch this show, but I read a really good post by Castell about Nina being a utopian in the classic sense of calling out all of the injustices of the world, right?
Yeah. I mean, she is simultaneously kind of like cynically experienced and also tremendously naive, and that makes for good character drama. And I think that describes the show quite well as well. I think that it is both cynical and optimistic. It is realistic, but never too dour about it. I think that it's a very good portrayal. It also is a good portrayal of positing that you might have to be a little bit weird to try and make your job and your life about making music, and I think that's an important factor as well.
Yes.
Quite frankly, a little dysfunctional, perhaps.
Yes. And then there's also the thing, right, of like, also, to its credit, Girls Band Cry, also a very funny show. Like in the midst of like its like self-reflection and like it's like pretty realistic like tackling of like working in a creative field and like working together with other creatives who may have their own motivations.
Right.
It's also just really fun to watch these acerbic personalities bounce off each other.
Some of the strongest T-shirt game I've seen outside a live-action tokusatsu in quite some time.
I think Girls Band Cry is probably the other strongest contender for like best anime faces of the year. Just the
even if they're not as like stylistically different or whatever because it's 3D, the use of the faces that they choose and when they choose to use them is very, very effective.
It's very well done.
Yeah.
Nice beer.
Nice beer. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to remember the shirt because I actually used one of those for my Anime Moments post. Hope for the best and prepare for the worst, as Nina's proudly wearing. But I think it's just a good all around show.
Definitely.
As far as it at its core, I would still describe it as a comedy, I guess. But like there's a little more going on than
It's a slightly blacker comedy than we're used to.
You laugh because it's kind of real, right? It's like you
laugh to keep from crying, sort of
a little bit, right? Yeah. Like these characters. It's like like obviously they're larger than life, right? Like but like their struggles, right, and the things they go through. It's like it's funny because it
I think
someone like this, or you've seen something like this, right?
Or you are someone like this.
Exactly.
My like real anxieties, right?
My pitch at the time, and I didn't mean this quite literally, but what if Bocchi the Rock was real?
Wow. Yeah. I'm not sure who that's a sicker burn on, quite frankly.
No, I love that actually. That's extremely good.
That's basic. That's kind of because they cover similar concepts in a much different way, right? Yeah. But go ahead, Zigg.
I was just going to say, I think Bocchi is a slightly more overtly comedic, perhaps slightly cuddlier take on the.
Yes, because even if the portrayal of Bocchi is like anxiety is like generally like pretty decent. I love Bocchi, but that is also the show where it's like, oh, if you're mentally ill, all you need are 3 really good friends. Whereas Girls Band Cry posits if you're mentally ill.
You're going to have a tough time in society.
Maybe you need 4 really good friends.
Friends
in the heaviest scare quotes. And also several years of counseling.
Yeah, and again, that's the very
comrades in arms.
Yes.
That's the very broad sort of, pitch to people to very quickly explain in one sentence what Girls Band Cry is, but it falls apart under, I think, stricter criticism. But Nina's a very different character than Bocchi. Even though she has anxiety, she will also punch you in the face. So
she'll swing a light fixture at you.
She deals with her anxiety by overcompensating.
Cut the cord off the lamp and zap you with it.
Right. Uh-huh. She deals with anxiety by overcompensating instead of going to her shell deeper. Right. So
yes.
So it's just a good all around show. It makes you feel a range of different things with it, and I just really enjoyed it.
A great surprise.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right. So at number 1, and perhaps not as surprising, we have Dungeon Meshi, or I will say once for the algorithm, Delicious in Dungeon, but in this house we call it Dungeon Meshi.
Dungeon Meshi. Remember about 100 minutes ago where I was like, Frieren is what the Isekai anime could be, and game inspired and such. This is that, but like way better.
much better.
Way more thought out, way more impressively constructed.
And as I said, if you've already watched this one, then you can go watch Frieren, but watch this first.
Alternatively, I will say Frieren, but you haven't watched Dungeon Meshi yet. What are you doing?
Watch them both, but watch Dungeon Meshi first. And to be fair, it's a much different approach than Frieren to this. It's a completely different approach to things, but Dungeon Meshi is
very funny.
Sometimes, yes. Many times.
The time,
I think
a lot of the
this
times.
show is very surprisingly very good at like deftly maneuvering between comedy and like making it work for the drama it has constructed. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, to me, what eventually sold me. I don't think there's anything quite like Dungeon Meshi. First of all, like,
Right.
I don't know if there's really
completely unique.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything I can directly compare it to. I mean, it is a pretty simple idea, or it starts out as a pretty simple idea of this party going down to find the red dragon because the dragon ate, one of the party members' sister, and they have to survive by eating the monsters and cooking.
But
them
as
in
somebody
interesting
who
ways.
recently played the remake of the original Wizardry, I went through this. My entire party died on the 6th floor, and I had to
You had to go
hike
rescue
down to rescue them. And then my second party died, and I had to make a third party and grind them up to go hike down and rescue them all one by one.
But the fourth castle stood up.
And I think what it becomes is this interesting combination of there's some good world building as far as like how the dungeon operates and everything, but to me, more importantly, the more time you spend with the characters, particularly the main cast, the more you grow to love them and appreciate their group dynamic, their chemistry together.
Yeah,
and I'll admit that took a little time, I think, for me in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It's a slow burn through the I think
first couple episodes, but as time went on, I only grew to love them more and enjoy the show more. As they grew together as a group, right?
I think that's definitely one of like Dungeon Meshi's strongest qualities is like
it starts off a slow burn, right?
Yeah, it's like it starts off and these characters are all like, I'm not going to say cliche, right? But it's more like they are probably they take on familiar shapes, right? You have the lady elven mage, you have the human fighter, right? Like you have these very recognizable
rogue,
right? You have these very recognizable fantasy archetypes, and I think it's like as they peel back the layers, like. To compare it to like to Arrow, you were just talking about like playing Wizardry, right? It's like I assume there's not a lot of like. Are the characters in Wizardry just are they just like functions essentially? Are they just okay?
There are no characters in Wizardry.
yeah, okay, just double checking, right? And so you can it's almost like that feeling of like as you peel back the layers of each of the main cast of Dungeon Meshi, they become more and more real people, right? And yet their stories are indelibly tied to the world building and setting of Dungeon Meshi, right? I think this is most obviously. Communicated with, like, for example, Senshi, right? The dwarf in the party. Like, he has this personality, he has his tropes, he has his character dynamic, and, probably the quote-unquote least fleshed out of the main cast for much of the story. But, like, the more you peel away at those layers, the more you discover just how much his story is tied not just to the dungeon, but to the world of Dungeon Meshi as a whole, right? Like, his entire worldview, his personality, like, is informed by the world he was raised in, And you get this in between, yes, like a legitimately great comedy, right? Like, it's I think it's like, these characters are so fun to watch bounce off each other, not just during the funny moments, but also the serious moments. Like, they all, like, like it's so cliche to say, oh, these characters are multifaceted, but it's like, but it is that feeling of like, oh, like you want to see these characters doing anything, right? Like, and you're going to learn something interesting about them.
Yeah. Great cast. I'm trying not to like say too much that's overly taking the rest of the series into consideration.
We should.
Yeah.
Look, they announced season 2, so we know it's coming.
Yeah, I think some of the funniest individual moments this year came out of Dungeon Meshi, like as far as just like absurd laugh out loud, everybody wearing the orange frog suits,
the still shot of the dragon's foot. I think to me
some of the triggerisms, like zooming into the low res version of
digital zoom.
I mean, to me, I think all the things you've said about Dungeon Meshi are true, but to me, it will always be first and foremost like the jokes that I remember. I think, because it was just so funny. The comedy was so perfectly pitched between the various characters, and they all just clicked so well, both as a dramatic ensemble and as a comedic ensemble, that the comedy and the drama felt natural, flowing in and out of each other. Like, I think with comedies it can be difficult to gear shift into dramatic stuff, and with drama it can be difficult to kind of like lighten the mood with comedy, and that transition was smooth as silk in Dungeon Meshi. It effortlessly shifts between modes, invisibly, which is exactly how you want it to be.
Like, you probably start to get the vibe towards the end of the season that, like, especially, let's just say post Fallen, things are starting to, like, maybe gear up to appear more serious, right? More dramatic, right? Like, but
yes,
and I think it speaks to the strength of Dungeon Meshi that, like, here's the thing: the jokes do not stop. This story is going to be funny all the way to the end.
I was worried when it was running the manga. I was like, "Oh no, is this just going to be serious now?"
Well, I think I think to its credit, even when it's like deadly serious, I was still very compelled because like, there's very little humor to be found in Senshi's backstory,
right?
But I think it's still gripping as hell, nonetheless, and I think it takes a real deft hand to like to dual wield those as capably as Dungeon Meshi does consistently.
Yeah,
is Senshi a ranger?
He's a fighter.
Is he a fighter?
Now somebody who has played wizardry. In Kui's original notes, Senshi's listed as a.
Yes. Oh, I was gonna say, I told you about this.
You did. As G informed me of and showed me Kui's original early sketches. Senshi is a samurai, which is a high level class in wizardry that's basically a gish. It's a fighter that learns some basic spells. Okay. He was sort of I suppose he was sort of reworked into a fighter. It's only instead.
Okay. Yeah, he just happens to know how to cook.
Yeah, that's bad.
Senshi is a chef.
He's a chef. Yes,
the chef feat exists.
Yes.
Not wizard.
Anyway, I think one of the things we had kind of trouble with talking about Dungeon Meshi though is like I feel like you just kind of have to watch it. It's one of those shows.
It is
that
like it's
a lot of it is the vibes and the mood that we can't really convey into a podcast form. It
shares the like Trigger trademark of incredible like visual energy and visual storytelling. The kind of liveliness of the image that leaps right off the screen at you. That's the hallmark of Trigger and great animation in general.
I do want to shout out like Trigger's adaptation work on it as well. Like I think before it started, at least G and I think we had a bit of hand wringing of like, Trigger, are they going to be good for how this manga is?
Yeah, like Mr. Sex, Violence, and Mach Speed is going to do like Dungeon Meshi.
And then like a few episodes in, it was like I can't imagine anyone else doing it. Right?
I couldn't see any other studio do it now. To be clear, I think some credit definitely should go to Trigger because. To be clear, Dungeon Meshi the manga is also very funny, but Ryoko Kui's methodology of delivering jokes is different from Trigger's. Like the fundamental jokes stay the same, but I think Trigger did a really good job of like looking at these jokes as they are presented in a sequential manga, right, panel by panel, and was like, how do we make this pop for video, right? How do we make this joke land in motion? And I think they did a lot of really good work to like, again, not rewrite or change, but like massage jokes that maybe hit better panel to panel into something that works in animation. And
that's what a good adaptation should do, right? They tried to find the strengths of the material and took the parts that would be less strong in a different medium and kind of built them up in a different way to be just as effective, right? That's all you can ask for.
Yeah, and they picked the right moments to throw in their triggerisms, for lack of a better term. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yes.
the visual tricks that we would normally identify would trigger. They use them, in the right places, and not just like turn this into a quote unquote trigger. Right? Like this is it's serving, what little I've seen of the manga. You guys know a lot better than I do, but it's serving the source material well in the new medium, right? So
yeah.
Like,
I think our initial. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, when I'm saying like it's difficult to explain, you kind of just have to watch it. Like that's kind of a compliment for anime, because like that's the point of watching anime, right? You're getting part of the experience from watching it in an animated form, and not me just explaining it to you on the podcast, right? So
for sure.
Go ahead, G.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, you mostly wrapped it up already, but yeah, just like I think the reason why, like, yes, there's a little bit of hand wringing between Iro and I is like, I think it wouldn't have been a bad thing necessarily, but I think maybe we were a little worse. Oh, like, is this Dungeon Meshi just gonna be like funny faces and tweening? Like, like, is it gonna be like that? And I think it like shows like remarkable restraint on their part that they only bring out the like shit posty trigger, like in sparing amounts. Like even the shitty digital zoom, they employ it twice across the whole season, right? Like they don't even overplay one of their funniest jokes, despite the fact that one of Trigger's funniest jokes is overplaying their hand. They love doing that.
It's true.
Yep, they picked the right spots for it, right? But
yeah, and yeah, speaking to like the adaptation, it's like also like it's quite economic, right? Because like here's the thing, right? I mean, especially if you compare it to like a Frieren, for example, or a Dandadan, or any of the other like big money adaptations.
Right.
Dungeon Meshi is not that lavish comparatively. Like it has its moments, right? Like it has its episodes where you're like,
it definitely steps up in key moments. Yeah.
Like Sushio or Yoshinari fucking stepped in here, big dick strutting, be like, "Let me do this scene," Yeah. And you go, "Damn,
this 10 seconds is going to look so great."
Yeah,
there's that bit from one of the behind the scenes videos of them doing the opening, and Yoshinari did the like bit of the dragons flapping at the very beginning, and he's like, "I wish they gave me something harder."
Yeah, he's bored.
Yeah, he's bored animating these dragons. Yeah.
He desires a greater challenge than this.
Yeah, but it does look great. And it steps it up where it needs to in that area. But yeah, I think my only thing. And I am happy to hear you guys say that the manga stays true to itself. If that's what I'm hearing correctly, I don't want to put words in your mouth, because I did have concerns getting toward the end of the series that we were going in directions, more serious directions that I don't want to go.
This is like what we talked about with Dandadan, where when you're reading the manga, it's just you go to the next chapter, and with this anime, I don't know how long it's going to be until you get.
I mean, they don't even have a season announced yet, right? They just say it's in production,
right?
Yeah.
No time announced.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
They're working on it.
We left off introducing a lot of new characters.
Oh yeah.
Which
again, every worry you're feeling, we felt over at the time, right?
I hear you, and I'm just saying, as from my perspective as an anime only watcher. I am also feeling those things. I'm concerned about expanding the cast when it's taken a good long time to kind of get us attached to the main cast already, and now we're tripling the size of the cast, and then getting deeper into the world building elements, which are important, but my fear is maybe making the overall plot too important as we get into that. But hopefully those concerns will be addressed whenever we resume more anime.
I think so. Arrow, maybe you could back me up on this, but I feel like over the course of our journey reading Dungeon Meshi, there's like no less than 6 instances of oh my god, I cannot believe they're introducing a character like this. Like, oh god, what is like is Dungeon Meshi done?
Are we done?
And then 8 chapters later, I'm like, dude, this character is the base. I can't. This is the best character in the movie. Like, like I won't spoil who, but I'll just say there. I mean, look. Everybody had that response to Kabru, for example, right? Like, like when Kabru first gets introduced, everybody's like, "Oh God, we're getting like this type of character, right?" And then, like, by the end of like the first season, you're most like, actually, Kabru's all right. Like he's a sane. Yeah. He's a sane man in an insane world, and he's trying his best.
Yes.
Right.
And I would say that is kind of like one of Dungeon Meshi's like best qualities is like it'll introduce characters of very, very well hewn, recognizable fantasy archetypes that you will likely have a lot of like preconceived associations with, because to kind of speak to the same thing we said about Frieren, you have a like hindsight nostalgia or memory of like fantasy as you remember it. And I think Dungeon Meshi will consistently find ways to not subvert, because it's not subverting those expectations, but like fleshing out and rounding out these styles of characters in ways that they may not all become your favorite, but you will definitely like understand like why these characters are the way they are.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like, hopefully it's not like, what you're saying with Frieren, where they dumped, a dozen new characters and I didn't care about any of them, right? So, not to continue dunking on Frieren, but it's the two big fantasy shows this year.
Look,
right?
man,
so
there's a reason it's up there at the top of this list, and there's a reason why Dungeon Meshi's down here at the bottom.
Yeah, they're both good though. But yes. Yeah. So if I hope if and when more anime happens, they have the time to do what you're saying. It would be my, I guess, biggest concern.
Yeah,
but,
can't wait to watch Dungeon Meshi season 2 in 2026. Or something.
I mean, because just because they pulled it off in season 1 doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna. But we'll see.
The portents are good, at least.
Yes. It's they're off to a great start with it, and and I think this is another just all around good show that I think it's popular because it appeals to pretty much anybody, right? Like this can be.
It is hard to find a weakness in it.
Yeah. So. Okay. Well, that's the end of our list.
Yep. Congratulations to Dungeon Meshi. Congratulations to Trigger for the.
How many of we
voted a Trigger show anime of the year. What a shock!
Yeah, it was his 4th time.
What else? We had like Cyberpunk, Kill la Kill.
Kill la Kill. I think it's actually just those 2, right? Yeah.
We've been doing this so long, I don't even know. I mean, it's not like Trigger puts out shows that often either, right? But they're anyway. All right, well that's gonna do it. On to 2025, another GLORIO year ahead of us, year 13 or whatever we're on of the GLORIO blog. So we'll be back next year with another top 10. But for now, let's just wrap things up with our normal housekeeping. Please go to theglorioblog.com. As we've said, there are we've referenced many written things in this particular episode that you can go find. You also have everybody else's year-end wrap-up posts, things that they found interesting this year, and probably soon we'll have first looks for next season.
The machine never stops. Turning.
Yep. So
off this train we're on.
Stay tuned for that. Follow us on Blue Sky at GLORIO blog, where I occasionally am hosting things. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and of course YouTube, where you can like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, all those good things. Tell us what your top 10 anime, or at least your favorite anime, was this year, because I'm sure there are plenty of other things that we missed. But
tell us why we're full of shit on this very specific occasion.
Yes, tell us why we're wrong. Tell us why Oshinoko season 2 was actually number 1. And tell your friends, tell your enemies. We'll catch you next time.